What's up everyone, it's a Knife Style here, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video than I normally do. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be actually showing you guys some of the testing and cutting that I'm going to be doing, and not just this normal tabletop thing. But first, a little intro to this video. Basically, I'm going to be comparing if the Spyderco Gayle Bradley 2 can hang with the big boys with the on and the Chris Reeve knife Sebenza. And this is a video that was suggested to me by a viewer, so I really appreciate the idea of them suggesting it. And so I'm excited to get the testing underway. But basically, the reason I'm doing this video is because a lot of people try and compare mainly the Sebenza to knives in that under $200 price range, kind of like Wee knives, you know, maybe Tucson, some Best Techs, things like that. And the Gayle Bradley 2 is the only thing that I have tried that is a worthy competitor. So I'm excited to get this underway, and let's get cutting. Here's just a quick demonstration to show that all these knives are sharp before the testing, and I all sharpened them on the same stone and stropped on the same grit. If you're curious, it was a 600 grit Atoma diamond plate and then stropped on 4 micron stropping compound. That one was the on. Here is the Sebenza. So they can all push cut through this paper just fine. Here's the Gayle Bradley 2. So all these knives are sharp and good to go. Alright, so I'm outside and there's a little bit of background noise going on because, I don't know, there's like construction going on at the house next to me, but and it's really bright so I can't see the camera very well, but we're gonna get through this. And I apologize because I've never done this before, so I'll probably be bad at it. But anyway, first I'm gonna be testing just like how good the draw cut is on the Sebenza. And that machine just died down, so that's good. I got some cardboard here, but I will try and show it off, and maybe I'll show you like how I usually cut my cardboard. So here it is in this. I take it, basically cut all these corners off. So there's the first one with the Sebenza, and then next is the Untitled, or no, Gayle Bradley 2, and then the Untitled. Sorry if there's a little middle now with the Gayle Bradley, and then we have the Untitled now. I'll cut the other 2 flaps off with this thing. So Sebenza, what I got out of that test is not much because it's a pretty easy cut, but the Sebenza was the most comfortable one. The Gayle Bradley 2 was the best cutter, and the Untitled was somewhere in the, I guess the Untitled was last. I still like the Untitled, and it's still probably better than a majority of my knives. It just wasn't as good as the other 2 because, you know, the Gayle Bradley 2 is like 9 thousandths behind the edge, and the Sebenza is probably the most comfortable knife that I have. So I'm gonna go ahead. That's usually how I break these down. I actually took this cardboard from work. I usually put it through my legs like this. Looks kind of weird, but I was walking through the parking lot with these cardboard boxes all the way through work. So I usually just take it 2 layers at a time. I'll switch this one up to the Gayle Bradley 2 now. And then I'll cut down the middle with the Untitled. So the Untitled was pretty comfortable on that. And then I'll cut that in half. And then last one, the Sebenza. I'll finish it off with that. So overall, ergonomics, all these knives are really good. Cutting performance, the Gayle Bradley 2 feels a lot better just moving through the material, but I mean, they're still all really good with the hollow grinds on these Chris Reeve knives. What I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna really try and show the cutting like performance, or how good the initial bite is, or to show the edge geometry. I'm not gonna try and hold 2 knives at once, but here's the Gayle Bradley 2. I'm basically just gonna use very light pressure and see how this cut does. Probably shouldn't cut towards my leg like that, but I'm using almost no pressure at all, as light as I can possibly hold on to the knife. Let me do it with the Untitled. So as you can see, the knife's just coming up like this, while with the Gayle Bradley, it kind of just still cut the material as I went down, just because it's so thin behind the edge. But like, keep in mind, I'm using so little pressure, like that's how fast I can do it if I'm actually using the kind of pressure I'd use. And if I was trying to get the cut as fast as I could, I'll do the same thing with the Spyderco, but I expect it to just be pretty much the same as the Zahn. Here it is, very light pressure. That Nsingo blade is coming in close right now. All right, it slipped out. But this one actually did a little bit better. It's still not as good as the Gayle Bradley. I'll do it one more time with the GB2 just to kind of show that it was how good it was doing. Yeah, so overall, Gayle Bradley 2 is the better cutter. Now let's get to the ergonomics test. I'm gonna pause you guys so I can get everything all situated, and then I will get on to that. So with this now, I have 4 layers of cardboard stacked up. All I'm cutting against the grain of the cardboard. So this will be a pretty hard cut, and I'll show you guys how I do it. Let's see how the Gayle Bradley 2 does. I'm gonna be curious which one performs better, but here we go with this. All right, so it did it. That was really hard on my hand though. I said it was hard on my hand, but there weren't really any hot spots on my hand. It was just kind of like my whole hand is pretty much sore now. And I realized in my first recording of this, I had my coat like halfway unzipped and I look like an idiot. But now I'm gonna do it with the Spyderco, then the Untitled. All right, so I should have realized how cardboard boxes work, but I just cut all 4 of those against the grain, and now I can't really find any against the grain. So this one, I'm gonna be trying to at least cut like this. I don't know if it'll work, but this is 4 layers, so if not, I will just cut it with the grain. So yeah, this is kind of slipping out from under my legs, but it still felt a lot harder than the Gayle Bradley. All right, so I was able to get that through there. Honestly, ergonomics were good, no real issues. Still, it kind of pressed up into my hand a little bit right here, but that wasn't too bad. It wasn't really uncomfortable at all, and it was better than the Gayle Bradley 2. But the reason that the Gayle Bradley 2 was easier on my hand was because it's thinner behind the edge. So you got to keep that in mind. If I did this with like 10 layers of cardboard, Spyderco would win in ergonomics all day. But because you're using a lot more force with your hand, because it is not as good of a cutter, you are not getting that, sorry, I'm out of breath. I was using a lot of force there. You're not getting the cutting potential and the ease of cutting that you get with the Gayle Bradley 2. So now for the Untitled. All right, so now for the Untitled, 4 layers of cardboard, all with the grain. I'm gonna go back into the Gayle Bradley 2 with the grain just because it's kind of unfair, even though it did really good. But let's get started. And the Untilted's a knife that I really haven't used that much, so I'm excited to see how it does. But all right, so that last part, I got stuck in that choil a little bit, but it actually felt really good, except that pocket clip kind of whacked up my hand right there. It hurt a little bit, and that was just kind of how I grabbed the knife immediately to do it. So yeah, that pocket clip is kind of a hot spot, and that's been the most uncomfortable knife since. Now for the GB2. All right, 4 layers of the GB2, all with the grain. Now let's see how it does. Super easy, goes right through. A lot better cutter than these 2. That's really just because this is 9,000ths behind the edge and those are like 19,000ths, and that really shows you what edge geometry can do. So I hope this kind of, on this demonstration, at least kind of showed that. But overall, for ergonomics, Spyderco wins in the ergonomics aspect, but with cutting performance, the Gayle Bradley 2 actually beats him out just because it's thinner behind the edge, and so it's not as hard on your hand. It just makes cuts a little bit easier. You don't have to use as much pressure. The Spyderco, while the ergonomics are really good, it just didn't cut as well because because I was using so much force with my hand, it wasn't really targeting an individual hot spot. What it was doing was just making my whole entire hand sore, which, don't get me wrong, is really good, because if you did that with a PM2 that's 20 thousandths behind the edge, your hand would be pretty much dead by now. But these knives are just so good at cutting, so good at ergonomics, but the Gayle Bradley 2 eventually wins out in the end. And I don't want to make it seem like the Spyderco and Untitled are bad cutters, because they're 20 thousandths behind the edge. Oh, I almost just fell over. That didn't happen. But they are about 20 thousandths behind the edge, but they are a lot better cutters than like your flat grinds that have really thick stocks. These are overall good performers. They're just not as good as something like the Gayle Bradley 2. Alright, let's see how each of these knives perform in the saber grip like this. So usually for all my cardboard cutting, like I was showing, I'm using this hammer grip because you're getting a lot more force and a lot more power behind that cut. And when you use that saber grip, you're farther away from that cutting edge, basically just making you not get as much power behind it. So what I'm going to do is simply, with the grain, go all along this saber grip, see how it does. I usually don't use this very much, but I'm going to try it out. And I'm not going to hold it between my legs and I just won't, I guess. So I ran out of blade length there at the end, but not really any issues. Now for the Untitled, same thing. Once again, with the grain, saber grip, I need to remember that. It's just a habit to go to a hammer grip. So pretty good, a little bit of a, not really a hiccup in there, just not as clean of a cut. Gayle Bradley 2, let's get this on camera. I think I might have messed those two up. So this one, okay, doing that, honestly, I didn't really notice anything special. I don't really think that was that good of a test just because it was really light cutting, but still, I'll put it in the video. All right, so what I got here, I got 6 layers of cardboard all stacked up. What I'm gonna do, I don't expect these knives to be able to even cut through all this. I'm just gonna see if I'm using all the force in my body, what it's gonna feel like ergonomically, how it's gonna feel on my hand. I'm gonna save the Gayle Bradley 2 for last because if one is gonna cut through all this, it's gonna be that one. But this is smaller cardboard since I've cut a lot of it up, so it's gonna be harder to do. All right, so that was about all I got. Once again, the Untitled, I didn't feel that hot spot on the pocket clip this time, but I didn't make that deep of a cut in. I made it pretty deep. Let me try and show this on camera. I made pretty deep right there, but really that was only the first couple of layers. So now for the Spyderco, but overall, ergonomics wise, that was actually really good. Let's try this one out. All right, that's about all I got there. But honestly, ergos, I did not really feel anything on there. So really good job by the Spyderco, really well done. For the final one, the Gayle Bradley 2, let's see how it does. Let me get these stacked up, ready to go. Let's do this. All right, I got the first couple of layers on there, but yeah, my hand's pretty much dead. Overall, no real ergonomic issues. I'm kind of getting a little bit of a blister right there. I think that might be from the Gayle Bradley 2. I'll show you guys a little bit more of a close-up on that. But overall, I'm impressed with all these knives at least, but I'm really impressed with the cutting performance of this GB2. It is better than the Spyderco and the Untitled. My conclusions from that testing is that for cutting performance, the Gayle Bradley 2 is the one that wins just because it's so thin behind the edge, and it is also a hollow grind like the Spyderco and the Untitled. But for ergonomics, I think that the Spyderco is a little bit ahead of the Untitled and the Gayle Bradley 2. And if you're wondering between these two, I would probably go with the Untitled. Let me explain myself really quick. So in that test, there was a cut I did with the Untitled where that pocket clip was a hot spot, kind of like right here in my hand. And it was one of those things where then I did another cut with the Untitled. It was almost like that pocket clip wasn't even there. So my thought on that is I was just holding the knife in the wrong way. Now, some people might say, well, that's just an ergonomic issue. You should be able to hold it in any way that you like. And personally for me, Once I get more used to this knife, once I use it more, I kind of know exactly how to hold it, and then I'll just do it like that from there on. And so that's not really an issue with me. My main issue with the Gayle Bradley Ergonomics, before I say this, I just want to say all of these knives are extremely comfortable in hand, and so this really isn't that much of a complaint. But when I was cutting like 4 layers of cardboard, 5 layers of cardboard, something like that, you see how it is an incline here and then it dips down like that. What that does is when you're holding it like this, it's still very comfortable, but as you're pushing down as hard as you can and as this is pulling up as hard as it can, you see that go into my hand right there? Because that little dip up, that's what it does. And so basically the more I push down and the more this resists up, the worse that gets. And so with a bunch of when you do a lot of power behind a cut and it's a very hard cut to do, you can get a little bit of a hot spot, and I have a little bit of kind of a blister forming or something. But it's one of those things where the Sabenza and the Umlanzon win for ergonomics for me, just because it's a flat back here on the Sabenza and then a flat back here on the Umlanzon. And what that does is that transfers all of the power of your cut to the strong parts of your hands. You know, like Gayle Bradley 2 was kind of targeting this part right here and not the entire muscle of my hand, I guess you could say. So that's why these are so comfortable, and that's why they did better. Even with that little bit of a hot spot on the Umlanzon Pirate Clip, I still think that that was pretty good. So let's talk about cutting performance, because it was one of those things where I just want to say that with ergonomics and cutting performance, all of these knives are pretty good. The Sabenza and the Umlanzon do it better than a lot of other production knives I've used. Lots of other Spydercos, they just really cut better than them. But the Gayle Bradley 2 is kind of out of their league with cutting performance, but I understand why. Let me get a thickness behind the edge measurement before I start talking too much, but here we go. So the Umlanzon, I'm looking at like 18.5 thousandths behind the edge right there. Is that going to show up? Every time I measure, the lighting always gets messed up, just because it's not the best looking from a screen onto a screen. For the Sabenza, 18 thousandths, 17.5 thousandths. I'll just round that up right there. So these are both pretty thin with their deep hollow grinds, but if you look at the Gayle Bradley 2, 8.5 thousandths behind the edge, about 9 thousandths behind the edge with a hollow grind. And it's one of those things where all of these knives are ground very well and cut very well, but the Gayle Bradley 2 just performs a lot better with basic uses because it's thin behind the edge. Now, keep in mind, I understand why Chris Reeve, when designing the Sabenza, or I don't know if he designed the Umlanzon or not, let's just say he did, I understand why he didn't want the knives to be 9 thousandths behind the edge and a hollow grind, because he obviously understands cutting performance. He probably knows way more about knives than any of us do, but it's one of those things where he was looking to build a knife to last a lifetime in really any conditions. The Sabenza is a knife that you can carry to a wedding and also carry to a job site. It's just one of those that can really do anything. And so having a knife that is 9 thousandths behind the edge with a deep hollow grind probably will not be the sturdiest thing in the world, because the Sabenza, if you look at this plunge right here, you can see when that starts to actually thicken up with a hollow grind, and it's really about towards the top of my thumb, right about there. So you're going to get this much life out of the Sabenza, and imagine if from here all the way up to here was 9 thousandths behind the edge. That'd be a pretty fragile knife, and so if he's looking to build a knife to be a real workhorse, I understand why he didn't keep it so thin behind the edge. Now, the Gayle Bradley 2, this was designed by Gayle Bradley, and him and Spyderco wanted to combine together to make one of the most utilitarian and functional knives out there, and they really did a good job at it because it's so thin behind the edge, and this one probably won't thicken up. This one thickens up faster than the Sabenza does, just because it's kind of a more shallow hollow grind, because a lot of companies, they do hollow grinds, but you know, it doesn't seem like they're as good as they are on the Sabenza. What I'm going to do, it's kind of dumb, I'm going to stick this way up on the knife and just see how thick it gets. Like at 20, it's 25 thousandths behind the edge where my calipers are right now. So even though it will thicken up a little bit over time, it's still pretty thin, because that's going to be a ton of sharpening. So myth in the knife world is that you sharpen your knife like 10 times or something and it's pretty much done. You're better off to just throw it away or turn it into a fidget toy or something. But it's one of those things where you are going to get a ton of life out of these knives, but I feel like the Sabenza you are going to get more life out of. And even though I would rather have the Spyderco and the Untitled to be 9 thousandths behind the edge because I mainly do EDC tests with these knives, I understand why they are not. So judging by how this video is going so far, some new people to my channel are probably thinking to themselves, okay, why would anyone spend this much money on a knife when there is a knife like here on the market? And one suggestion is I would highly suggest to buy the Gayle Bradley 2 if you're looking for a user for a good price point. But I just want to bring to attention the little attention to detail improvements on the Spyderco compared to the Gayle Bradley 2. And I just don't want people to walk out of this video thinking that Chris Reeve knives are overpriced, because I've owned 3 of them, and I really think that they're some of the best knives, some of the best production knives at least out there in the world, and I really do like them. So first, I'm going to bring to your attention the chamfering that goes on with all these knives. A chamfer is basically just knocking down the edges, and it's just one solid chamfer all the way throughout, and that makes the knife feel a lot less blocky right there. Also, let's look at these micarta inlays. Look how nicely fit these things are. And on the inlaid versions, they actually use, I don't know what it is, but it's some sort of tape that's absurdly sticky. Like these won't come out. And Chris Reeve knives, they also won't like offer you to exchange inlays. Like I can't be like, hey, could you put some Box Elder Burl inlays in here? They won't do that because the inlays can crack if you take them out. It's just such a strong adhesive. Also, the chamfer kind of goes up into an apex at the top right there. I'm guessing that could maybe break a window, but I also like it because it's nothing in particular. Like if adrenaline's pumping, you're in a situation like that, yeah, you can probably slam this knife, just slam a piece of metal against the window and it'll break. But it's one of those things where I feel like that's just kind of them showing off a little bit, how that looks really good up there and lines up perfectly on both sides. And if you look at how centered this blade is, that looks really good. Kind of hard to tell because of that swedge on the Insingo, but just look how tight this blade is compact into the handle scales. It cannot really be a centimeter off center. I guess a centimeter is probably a lot when we're talking about this knife, but a millimeter off center, and it probably is going to rub against the side of these scales. It's just a work of art, very nice. Let's look at this Insingo blade, and even though it kind of looks weird, maybe like a bird's beak, it's just a very functional, and this little part right here looks so good. The satin kind of grind on here mixed with the polished stone wash, and just look at how all of these corners meet up at that tip. Let me try and get this to focus. Just this swedge meets up exactly with this secondary bevel, which meets up with this swedge, which meets up with this secondary bevel, just making such a good and impressive slicing and durable tip on there. It's just a work of art. I really like this. And a lot of times, this is a situation where I feel like Chris Reeve knives, you're getting better quality, especially with blade grinds compared to a custom maker. Now, there is something impressive about a hand ground blade, and that deserves some respect that I do not want to, degrade at all. But Chris Reeve knives, especially with the grinds, they're just so on point, so perfect, and so nice. Let me just show you the Untitled too. Look at that top swedge on there, the satin finish mixed with the stone wash. It looks so good. Look at where this terminates. Right exactly where this one terminates. And they all meet right up at that tip, all perfectly even in all the same spots. It just looks so good. Double harpoon looks great. And this is not sharp, but it is very thin. Probably could open a package with the back of this, or strike a fire steel or whatever you call them. I don't really know anything about bushcrafting. But it's just one of those things that these have such quality and precision and attention to detail that go into look at this milling on here. I mean, milling in titanium really isn't that impressive, but I still think that it looks really cool like this. Also, look at this sharpening choil. That is pretty well done on the Amazon. Honestly, not as good as the Spyderco. There's a little bit of light reflecting there. I don't know what that is. But look at how well done the Spyderco choil is. It's just this 45-degree angle. You are going to get so much sharpening life out of this. I feel like Chris Reeve, I don't know anything about, or I know a lot about him, but I don't know like a ton of personal stuff about him. But his knives almost look like he made them like he was a freehand sharper. And they're just really nice. They're really high quality, and I really like these sharpening choils. And then if you look at the Gayle Bradley 2 sharpening choil, this is my main complaint with this knife. it's just kind of a dud. I mean, it's smile. There's a smile here, kind of starting a recurve to form. It's not the best. I can fix that, but it's one of those things where I've sharpened this maybe 2 times, and it was like this from the factory. So it's just something to keep in mind. And the Gayle Bradley 2, still pretty nicely fit and finished knife, but it's just not as good as the Sebenza. There is the shadow boxing around here, and they actually did this in combined with the inlays in order to make it feel like a chamfered knife, but there isn't really any chamfering on here. It still is very comfortable. It's just kind of flat scales, which they are flat on the Sebenza, but there is the, chamfering that goes around. Both are very high quality, well-built knives. They're just not as high quality as the Chris Reeve knives. Look at the on here, how simple this is. There's one standoff here, one pivot, just 2 screws on this knife. That's amazing, and it amazes me. The thumb studs work as the blade stop, and they work as it in the closed position as well. I just kind of want to bring attention to the details that when you get Chris Reeve knives, you are getting what you pay for. These knives are not overpriced. They are very high quality. But if you are just a pure user and you're not as appreciative of these high quality things in a knife, then I understand why you would buy the Gayle Bradley 2 over these any day. But just look at these screws, very nice screws, all the same size. They give you the tool to take it apart. It's just, these knives, even though they are so good at cutting and such workhorses, they are kind of a work of art just to look at all the nitty-gritty details of them. So sorry if that took a little bit too long, but anyway, let me talk a little bit more about other things. So let's look at the carry of these two. So I'm just going to touch on this really quick. The carry on the Sebenza and the Untitled is better for one reason: the pocket clip. And the Spyderco clip is fine. I actually kind of like it, but this is the best pocket clip out there in the market, period. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. If I had to go with a deep carry clip that was better, either the wire clip or Protex deep carry clip, I think is really good. But it's got a decent amount of ramp that'll slide in and out of the pocket very nicely, and some large material or some thick pants can fit in this. It's got a double retention point, so it won't fall out if maybe you, I don't know, are you laying down and you get up. Sometimes that knife can fall out of your pocket. It's one of those things where this is my favorite pocket clip ever. I really like this. Some people will change out the clips. Some of the aftermarket clips do look really good. This kind of looks funky, and a lot of people don't like that. But honestly, I think that it's just functions so good, I don't care about how it looks. For the pocket clip on this one, it does not have as much ramp on there. It's still okay, but the tension is a little bit tight. So when I put this into my pants, a lot of times I hold the pocket of my jeans, then put it in. With this one, even though the pockets on my jeans are kind of flimsy, I can just slide it in like that, which is really nice. So there is a little bit of an extra step to this, but this one is pretty good. Doesn't carry as deep, which I don't really care about, but the carry profile is also very good. So overall carry, both of these are very good, but I like the Sebenza and the Untitled more for the sole reason of this pocket clip that they have. For the action on these knives, so the action, I don't really want to touch on this very much. I don't really care about it. Basically, the Sebenza, you can flick it out, it drops to your thumb, but it won't drop shut because this actually uses some lock bar pressure. Sorry, I just hit my table. Unlike a lot of knives out there that just use weak lock bar pressure to achieve a drop shut action, the Gayle Bradley 2 is also really good at this. Drops to my thumb, and then it has a decent amount of lock bar pressure, so it's not very fall shut. For the Untitled, this one is still getting broken in, but it does flick out very easily as I mess it up twice. But I like the thumb studs on the Untitled. They are pretty good, and I've seen some that are super smooth that just like fall shut to someone's fingers. Right now it's kind of a shake closed, and it still needs to be broken in, but it's just very nice. And just look how big this pivot is. I just want to say that. That's such a nice pivot. This thing, that pivot on there actually has some nice heft to it and weight. I've taken it apart. It's really cool. But that's about it for the action. All of these run on Foster bronze washers. Let's look at the last part of what I'm going to talk about, the value. So $550, $450, $170. Let's say that prices go up a little bit on the secondary, which I doubt it because this isn't that popular of a knife, the Gayle Bradley. But $200 for this still is a great price. I said this in my EDC update of the GB2 that I would pay $250 for this knife and still think I got a good deal. But a lot of people are probably going to say Chris Reeve knives are overpriced. Personally, I think that if anything we should highlight, it's that the Gayle Bradley 2 is underpriced. The reasons that these cost more, literally just skip back a couple minutes to where I talked about attention to detail, and keep in mind that these are made in America, backed by one of the best warranties that I've ever had. They also offer a spa treatment, which basically I have my small Sabenza in FedEx in the mail right now, going to Boise, Idaho, and basically what they do in that, sorry, I'm fumbling all over my words here, is they reblast the handle scales, and it basically makes them look good as new. Let me kind of show you. There are some snail trails on this, like right there and right there, and basically when they reblast them and make those go away and they look like the factory finish, kind of like this. I don't really have many snail trails on this yet because I haven't really carried it all that much. But it's one of those things where, oh, and guess how much that costs? $0. You just got to pay $15 for shipping on the way back, and that's it. And I really like that. It's kind of amazing that they offer it, and it's a very, very good warranty service. And a lot of people have had great experiences with them and want to support them more because of that, and trust that even if something goes wrong, if they mess up their own knife, they will fix it for you. And I really like that about them. Spyderco, their warranty, it's on and off. Some people I've heard have a fine experience. Some people it's like, yeah, they have my knife for 6 months and I still don't know what's happening with it. So it's one of those things where I don't really know. Spyderco's warranty is a little bit iffy, and Chris Reeve Knives warranty, they have great communication, great customer service, and I really like it, and I've had a great experience with it so far. So what should you take away from this video? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the Gayle Bradley 2 is a great knife, and probably if you look at all of the knives between $150 and $200, I will say that out of every single one that I've tried, the Gayle Bradley 2 is the best one out there. Chris Reeve Knives, still amazing. I still love them. One of my favorite brands. This Sabenza right here is probably my favorite knife, but the Gayle Bradley 2 really is a heavy hitter for its class, and I really like it. So I guess my conclusion for the video would be, if you're looking for a great knife, get the Gayle Bradley 2, and Sabenzas and Umlanzons are really cool knives, but I still like the Sabenza and the Umlanzon more. It's just the Gayle Bradley 2 is also such a good knife. So I hope you guys enjoyed this style of video. I know that my filming wasn't the best, and there was a lot going on that wasn't very good, but thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey, you want Sabenza?